You couldn't have paid me $1 million a year to do something different.
Why does consciousness exist in the first place?
Forgiveness and reconciliation takes strength.
It was a bit of a culture shock when I hit Sydney.
We hope the truth will out.
Welcome to Life and Faith from the Centre for Public Christianity. I'm Simon Smart.
I'm Justine Toh.
And I'm Natasha Moore.
This is our final episode of 2022. Things are winding down, or at least in theory, and it's that time of year when you do things that you only ever do at this time of year. Like, what do you guys do?
Like attempt to build a gingerbread house and then go on to banish the kids from eating it and put it all in the bin. I only do that once a year.
Well, that sounds like so much fun. I feel a lot of it's about the food. That's true. I feel like I only eat turkey and ham, Christmas. I mean, I call it Christmas ham, right? Can you buy it at other times of year? Presumably pigs are available at other times.
No, that's right. Actually, I wonder if also the after lunch coma kind of feels like tradition rather than
a once a year
I totally overindulged and that was terrible.
Yeah, that's a tradition I'm down with for sure.
Yeah, what about you, Simon?
No, not original things, but the tree and all of that. And Christmas for us is pretty traditional. Like we go for the traditional, really serious baked food. It's the very Northern Hemisphere experience.
Yeah.
Now, it seems that so much of the magic of Christmas comes from repeating things, those rituals, the things that we think are special because we do them at Christmas. Now, one of these traditions is the Christmas movie. Now, it's hotly debated, actually, what counts for a Christmas movie and what doesn't. You do both have Christmas movies you watch every year, don't you?
Well, traditionally, my family does. We watch Love Actually. We watch it on Tree Day or thereabout, which is when we put up the Christmas tree, and while we're making rumbles often. But that's kind of changed a bit in recent years because my niece and nephew got a bit older, and it's not appropriate. It was fine when they were babies, but it doesn't go over their head now. And it's kind of become more problematic over the years anyway, Love Actually.
Yeah, once you start to drill down into each of those relationships, you know that there's something seriously wrong
dynamics
going on.
Yeah.
And I especially don't like that moment. Well, actually, I don't like it now, but there was probably a time when I thought it was quite romantic where this guy has fallen in love with Keira Knightley, who's just married his best friend. And he's so weird around her, but he eventually tells her through cue cards that he'll love her forever, and because it's Christmas, he needs to tell her the truth and so on. He'll love her forever.
It's a classic romantic comedy scene.
Yeah, and he'll never make a move on her and all this. And the way that she looks at him, you're almost like, are they going to have an affair in the next couple of years or something? But it's supposed to be this really romantic moment, that it's this grand gesture. But I look at it now and I'm like, that's really emotionally manipulative, and it's kind of selfish. It's like you can keep it to yourself, surely. So
he's been trying that, to be fair, but yes.
I don't know.
Not defending.
I have to admit, I can't get Lindy West out of my mind. She wrote this very epic kind of screed about how much she hated this film. It's very funny to read. But she says that this particular scene spawns, this is her words, spawns a decade of nice guy emotional manipulation reframed as romance, and Keira Knightley kisses him for it. So yeah, I did not really like that.
Seems like there's a lot of things these days, songs you used to listen to, films you used to watch, that are no longer appropriate.
But then, I mean, I do think it was funny because when I saw the Ted Lasso Christmas episode last year, they kind of riff off that Love Actually scene. So Roy Kent has a niece called Phoebe, and she's been teased by a boy at her school because she's got bad breath. So Roy and Keely kind of door knock London to find a dentist to sort this out. And when they finally do that, they turn up at the boy's doorstep with these cue cards, and she basically tells him, Bernard, you hurt my feelings. Shame on you. A nice dentist has helped me out, and it will fix my stinky breath. But unless you make amends, you will stink forever. But then she's like, I forgive you, but please do better. Merry Christmas. And by some weird Christmas miracle, it's redeemed that scene for me because it's about holding someone to account for their poor behavior, but nonetheless being like, I forgive you, and it would be good if you could change a little bit.
Well, and it's interesting how that scene is so branded in kind of the collective cultural consciousness now
Yes.
that people can riff off that scene. There are all kinds of skits.
I know.
that
I
draw
watched a
on
couple this morning. It
and
was
stuff,
fantastic.
which plays into the, you know, Christmas is about the ritual and repetition, and some things enter the canon of like, this is the benchmark Christmas movie and everything else riffs off it. Do you have one, Simon? You don't really watch Christmas
No, I'm
movies.
not really a Christmas movie person, but I was thinking about this earlier, and one thing we do now every year, at least on the 21st of December, along with many other people. So my kids and I will listen to the Paul Kelly song, How to Make Gravy, which is a kind of a Christmas song. People have gravy day now and they wear the T-shirts and play the song. And
Yeah.
This is the
I
first
feel like
I've heard of it.
This was like reported a lot like last year or the year before, and I was like, what are you talking about? I've never
it's
heard
a
of this
beautiful
song.
song of Paul Kelly's that tells a story that actually this story is going to be made into a Christmas film next year. So on 21st of December next
will
year
you
it's
go and
coming
see
out.
it?
So I'm booking that one in. I think it'll be good. But no, it's a story of a guy who's in jail and he's calling his brother about Christmas, and he's thinking about what he's going to miss out on Christmas Day as all the family travels in from all over the country to be together. And that there's no chorus, but there's this line, who's going to make the gravy? He's obviously the gravy guy. And it's a song of real longing and beauty, and you're thinking about loss.
it's very sad.
But also joy. It's a really poignant song. I love that one.
Which is more depth than a lot of Christmas movies, a lot of
I think
Hallmark
that's fair
movies.
to say, though. But what does count for a Christmas movie these days?
Well, are you ready? I don't know. I have to admit, I prefer the kind of Christmas movie where Christmas is kind of in the background. So I guess you could say Die Hard qualifies for that. But even something like Silver Linings Playbook, where Christmas has no direct bearing on the film, but it's just there and you might see some tinsel. I mean, it lights beautifully, the lights.
And so therefore you might
everything
want
looks
to watch
good.
it. Yeah, that could be the sort of thing you'd watch on a Christmas day.
Well,
or around Christmas time.
In a way, but I think often these films, like if you think about it, they're about messed up people trying to grapple with the possibility of change in some ways, or the possibility of grace, maybe. I don't know. And it's like we want communion, we want relationship, we want things to be restored, even when it's difficult. Like I think that's probably true of Die Hard. He wants to be with his family, he wants to be with his wife.
Yeah, it's reconciliation. And
like there's
Though, I
something
mean-
there. But I have to admit though, by that measure, every movie is a Christmas movie.
Yeah. I don't know about the background thing, like because Emma has Christmas in it,
Does it?
but yeah, there's some Christmas. You know, Mr. Elton proposes to her at after a Christmas party.
Yeah.
But I feel as though maybe if it features Christmas, that's not enough. Maybe here's my line in the sand. I feel like the climax has to happen at Christmas. So I was thinking about While You Were Sleeping, because it occurred to me recently that While You Were Sleeping, which is that like 90s rom-com with Sandra Bullock and
I
Bill
loved
Pullman.
it. Absolutely
It's a great
obsessed
movie.
with
I mean,
it
I
when
haven't
was younger.
rewatched it. Maybe Justine, it
I reckon it
stand the
holds
test
up.
of time. But it actually happens at Christmas. But I feel like the climax of the movie happens like afterwards. And so I'm not sure it really qualifies as a Christmas movie. It has to be like, oh, it's Christmas Eve or Christmas Day.
Remind me of
Everything
the
is
setup.
Resolved. So While You Were Sleeping is Sandra Bullock works at a train station and she's like in love at a distance with this guy who gets the train every day and has no idea who she is. And he falls onto the tracks and she like rescues him, saves his life, but he's in a coma. And there's a kind of mix up at the hospital that she doesn't exactly correct. So suddenly his whole family thinks that she's his fiance, who they've never heard of or met. And so he's in his coma. She hangs out with their family. She doesn't really have anyone in her life. And she kind of falls in love with his family and eventually kind of his brother. And he wakes up and, of course, they think he has amnesia because he doesn't remember her.
Well, you know, this happened to a friend. This actually happened to a friend of mine.
What? Which part?
So a friend of mine is going on his first date with a girl he'd met at a wedding, and he'd asked her out. They're going out for dinner. They parked the car, started walking to a restaurant. He then went, oh, I forgot my wallet, turned around to run back to cross the road, gets hit by a car, like really hard. His shoes were left on the road as he went sort of hurtling through the air.
Oh my
He ends up
goodness.
being rushed to hospital. She's there with him, hardly knows him. She's just really met him. And he's got head injuries, he's got a coma. And she's sitting there as the
Oh my
rest of the
goodness.
family.
Did
before
this happen
film.
before?
Yeah, what year? What year is this?
It would have been the 90s. Anyway,
Wow.
he's in a coma. She's where with the family are coming in, and who are you? And she's having to introduce herself. Anyway, he recovers eventually, happily, and they get married.
Oh, so it's a real life
Sure.
rom-com.
That's crazy.
That's amazing.
So it's interesting while you guys are talking about those movies, they're all quite old now. It seems that it's perhaps rare that a new film is added to the canon of Christmas classics. And there's a couple of new contenders every year. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about a couple of those. Violent Night, which is out in cinemas at the moment. Now, Natasha, you've been to see this. And Spirited, which I think we've all seen, which is a riff on A Christmas Carol. It's got Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell in it. It's on Apple TV. So we're going to decide here today, do these measure up as classic Christmas movies? And also, how do we measure them against the original Christmas story? What kind of Christmas are they offering us or trying to win us over to?
You ain't driving, are you?
I steer a little, but the ranger do most of the work.
This is my 4th year as a Santa. How about you?
I started the whole damn thing.
It's Christmas!
We decided that you could have one gift.
Early.
What is it?
That is a direct hotline to Santa Claus himself.
I can talk to Santa.
All right, revelers. Welcome to your worst Christmas ever.
Let's go!
You have $300 million in your personal vault. That's what I want for Christmas. Who is he? Because it's not your typical mall Santa.
Santa, are you there? Daddy said you were very busy tonight. My name's Trudy Lightstone. Are you gonna help us, Santa?
Yeah, Trudy.
Santa?
You're on my nice list. Santa Claus is coming to town. These bad men, they're all on my naughty list. Naughty. That's naughty!
And what do you do to the naughty ones?
I give them a lump of coal.
Where is it?
I gotta watch.
I believe in you, Santa.
That's the trailer from Violent Night, which stars David Harbour, who plays Hopper in Stranger Things. You might know him from that. And he's playing a jaded Santa who's pretty cynical about his job these days. And while he's delivering presents on Christmas Eve, he stumbles into a hostage situation where there's a group of mercenaries who are trying to steal $300 million from the vault of a wealthy family. Now, what follows evidently is a kind of die-hard action movie where Santa's picking off the mercenaries one by one, often using Christmas-themed weapons like a Christmas star or a candy cane that's been sucked to the point of a sharp knife. Now, Natasha, you've been to the movies to see this. What did you think?
I was very excited about this film. I thought the trailer was amazing. I thought the movie was good. I'm not sure it lived up to what I was hoping it would be, but David Harbour was excellent. He was a great Santa. And it did
very funny.
it did have a lot of hilarious moments. I should say some of my hesitancy about it is that it was very violent. And I know that it's called Violent Night, and so, it does what it says on the tin. I suppose I
got to deliver.
I kind of maybe wasn't expecting quite the level of gore, and it was probably a bit much for me.
So you're not necessarily recommending this for the Christmas family lunch?
I'm not, no. Definitely do not take your children to see this movie, please.
So what kind of version of Christmas is it going with? Like Santa's the ultimate good guy.
Yeah,
right?
well, I mean, he's a bad Santa at the start. I mean, maybe he used to be a good Santa, but like the opening scene, he's in a bar and he's like quite drunk and ranting about how kids these days, only care about the presents and they just want their video games and it's all transactional. And so he's kind of going through the motions, but is really disillusioned with the whole thing. But then that is merged with this gritty, gory heist movie sort of. But even that is kind of very Christmassy. So like the bad guy, they were all using code names for the evening. So he's Mr. Scrooge, and he's got, gingerbread and candy cane and stuff, his like various henchmen and women. But also he's got like a Christmas themed origin story as a villain. Like, when he was a kid, he loved Christmas. And then one year his dad got laid off and they didn't have anything for Christmas. And it starts him off in his life of crime and, disillusionment. And this is why he's on the naughty list now, Santa's naughty list. So they really do go hard on both the hardcore action and the Christmas theming, which is a bit kind of discombobulating, really.
Is there a way you would describe what they're doing here with Christmas and this genre?
I wonder if, in some ways it's just a bit of fun, right? Bringing together these two quite disjunctive genres. Like it makes your head spin and is quite, like there are some comedy moments to that. But is it trying to marry the seriousness of real life and terrible things that happen in the world with that kind of sometimes quite saccharine and maybe a bit empty, upbeat, Christmassy cheer, which, from the perspective of the actual original Christmas story, you want to marry those two things, that the joy and the peace is real, and it's real in a very kind of dangerous and dark world. So, the story after Christmas where like King Herod wants to kill the baby Jesus, this child promised as King of the Jews. And so he goes and kills a whole bunch of under 2-year-olds. That doesn't feature very much in Christmas cards and things, the massacre of the innocents. I think maybe I'm like over-reading into it on this, but I do feel as though there's a kind of effort to ground the sugary Christmas fare and be like, okay, what would it mean to actually believe in some kind of Christmas magic, and what would that do for people?
What does it do with the naughty nice thing? Because that's a big part of the Christmas mythos.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? In some ways, what the Santa theme has become in our Christmas culture is the opposite of the original Christmas story, because it's like a naughty nice, have you been good? You'll get presents if you've earned them, if you deserve them, as opposed to the Christmas story as this radical, undeserved gift, this grace of like, the world is really dark and has rejected God, but God's going to come and like give of himself and become human in spite of, us not deserving that at all. Actually, as we were leaving the cinema, there was like this thing on the wall, this kind of neon sign where you could press a button and it would alternate between naughty, nice, naughty, nice, naughty, nice, and slow down and give you one, like which one are you? Which I was a bit like, oh, how interesting. Like I wonder how that's going with children and parents. If like, because it's a parenting tool, right? Do you use this, Justine? I don't know if you do Santa with your kids.
We definitely don't do the naughty nice thing, because that seems to sum up one person. Well, it sums up people's character in that one thing. Like, there's a real emphasis these days on that's naughty behavior. Not that you're naughty. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So in Violent Night, Santa has this kind of like holographic list that he can check. And obviously Trudy, the little girl, she's nice. She's like lovely and not like all those other kids who are kind of grubbing for presents. She just wants her parents to get back together. Whereas all the bad guys are on the naughty list. Yeah. And there's no redeeming that. There's no question of maybe they could transfer to the nice list. I mean, no, they are, to be defeated, eliminated. That's all.
This is Life and Faith, and Justine and Tasha and I are talking about Christmas movies. Well, that was Violent Night, which is out in cinemas at the moment. Another Christmas film this year is Spirited, which is an update in the form of a musical of Charles Dickens' story, A Christmas Carol. There are lots of versions of this and remakes of this. Justine, you've seen this. Well, I think we've all seen this one. Tell us the kind of the plot.
Yeah, well, it's a remake of A Christmas Carol. So this is the whole thing of Scrooge, this nasty guy who is visited by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. Although in this film, it's the ghost of Christmas yet to come. And they're visiting this guy played by Ryan Reynolds. His name is Clint, and he's someone who kind of whips up nastiness for a living. And they're there to try and change him for the better, that he's someone they can work with. He's someone in need of redeeming, and redeeming is the language they use. But this film is a slight departure from those other Christmas Carol remakes in that it also puts Will Ferrell's character, who's the ghost of Christmas Present, kind of on the same level as Clint in some ways. So Will Ferrell's character is also kind of toying with this idea, who is redeemable? Am I redeemable? Which is a really different kind of spin, I reckon, on the whole genre.
On a bitter, cold Christmas Eve, one dark soul is selected for redemption by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and yet to come. A tradition that continues to this very night.
Like a Christmas Carol?
Yes, yes. If you would just let me get this out. Sit.
So out of all the people on the planet, murderers, people who do gender reveal parties, I'm the guy you're gonna haunt.
You know what? Forget it. I told you, the guy is a level 20 pain in the dickens.
Come on, I can take this guy.
I'm your ghost of Christmas Present.
La 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 la, I'm not watching your dramatic re-encrapment.
Hey, I'm haunting you. You can't just run away from me when I'm haunting you. Hello?
I believe he can be a positive force for mankind. People don't change.
We got a runner!
That's just fun to watch.
I'm here to change him to being a more positive force for humanity.
Clint. Yeah. This is where real change begins.
Now, I really like Ryan Reynolds. I'm a bit of a fan, I think, particularly since watching Welcome to Wrexham, which is the documentary that came out this year about Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney buying like a football team in Wales. That was one of my favourite shows this year, so I was quite keen for this movie, and I did enjoy it. You guys, what were your thoughts? I kind of made you watch it.
Yeah, it's that style of film's not really my cup of tea, but I don't want to be the Grinch about this. There were some good bits in it, and this, it's obviously using a very well-worn setup, and that was great. And there's some bits to talk about in this for sure.
Yeah, I say to Simon that it was better than I thought, which is like damning it with faint praise, isn't it? Anyway, so yeah, but I did enjoy it, and I might have shed a tear at one point or two. So,
really, Justine?
Yeah.
It got to you. Pulled at the heartstrings.
We all sometimes get a tear, even in corny, silly films, and yeah, maybe this is one of those.
I quite enjoyed the setup of this, though. That there's this business, like this annual thing, like a Christmas Carol happens every year, that there's this whole kind of support staff of ghosts who are picking a person each year who, if they became a redeemed person instead of a jerk, then that would have ripple effects and like make the world a better place, because they have these negative effects on the people around them. And let's turn that to something positive. So they do that once a year on Christmas. And I quite liked that premise, and they had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was quite funny and quite self-aware, like all the jokes about, the afterlife being a musical. And
yeah, I like the jokes about it being a musical because, I was sort of sharing the humour of that, but they did, in that sense, didn't take itself too seriously, which was good. And some of those things are really interesting, the ripple effect idea that you can do small, nasty things that have really serious, ripple effects, as well as, you can reverse that with. And it's this call to a kind of kinder, more thoughtful engagement with each other. It's probably good for more of that.
I did wonder about that theme in terms of if they're doing it for the ripple effects, which was kind of the suggestion of some of the songs. Is that kind of treating people as sort of instrumental? Like rather than we care about this person, we want them to be redeemed, to be transformed into a better person. It's like, how can we access some other outcome through them? Do you know what I mean?
That would be a negative take on that.
But you have to remember, like the Ghost of Christmas Present, Will Ferrell, he is grappling with that himself, right? So it's almost as though, and maybe you could argue that this is instrumentalizing the Clint character, the Ryan Reynolds character, that he needs Ryan Reynolds to be able to be changed, because otherwise does that mean his own change wasn't real? And I did find that unredeemable song where there's a real sense of, like, let me read you some lyrics. Am I forever unredeemable? Can I ever overcome all the wrongs I'm running from? Do I deserve to find there's a soul who could see any good in me? Like, this is the kind of...
am I someone could forgive?
I know. This is
very
the stuff that you think
theological.
about when in the middle of the night, right? Where you kind of, everything's quiet and you're suddenly just faced with, who you are and what you might have done and being like, is this what it is for me? Or is it all
What's
over?
surprising for me was that it picked up on this theme of feeling guilt and needing redemption, which I've kind of said lately in various places that there's less of that now. People are less sort of guilty. They feel anxious about things. But this really picks up on a very traditional notion of needing redemption because you've done things that you can't make up for them. Where we search for something to help us do that.
Yeah, maybe the Christmas movie, Simon, is where redemption as a theme has migrated to. I mean, Christmas is about redemption.
It is.
And you didn't know about it because you don't watch any Christmas movies.
I'm being introduced to this.
We're maybe not winning you over to this genre. I thought it was interesting that because it was kind of, how do you change someone? Can they change? Does anybody ever really change? And Clint, the main character, who they're trying to change, is stamped and unredeemable because he believes that people don't change. And he believes that kind of personally about himself, but also professionally because he is kind of a communications person who his job is to like sow discord online in order to get people elected or sell whatever his client is trying to sell. And so he's like, no, this is what people are like. At bottom, they're selfish, they're lazy, they want to be right, they want to feel good about themselves, they're tribal. And so hate and outrage is how you make things happen. And so I kind of thought it was interesting that they were like, okay, the way that you change someone is you got to confront them with their own life and their own self, and that will be the transformational moment. And that if you can make that happen, then that's it for life. Now they'll be good. But then it also kind of undercuts that and asks those questions about, well, hang on, you don't then wake up and have a bad day?
Well, it kind of addresses that at the end where it starts to say, look, it isn't just about being entirely a new person. You're going to have your moments, but just start trying and step in the right direction. And that comes, as you say, from being confronted with their worst day, really. And that was interesting to me, the way they kind of brought them into a scene that represented the worst thing they'd ever done, and the implications of all that, and the way they felt powerless against that. But then they take them on this journey to sort of, maybe you can sort of make up for it with small steps. But the view in some ways of human nature is very New Testament. We need something outside of ourselves to make that change.
Tell me more about that. I want to hear more.
Well, I mean, Christmas is all about that, right? So this notion that we can't do it ourselves. We need something to come to us from outside. And that's entirely what Christmas is about, actually, this moment where God comes to us in this incredible moment of self-giving so that we can be actually helped in a way that probably we're not going to be able to do just by trying harder, which is the sort of the message by the end of this film, I thought. Did you think that or not?
Yeah, it was kind of a mixed message there. Like I thought it was in some ways quite subtle and quite like, oh, this is complicated. Because as you're saying that, I was like, well, yeah, because it's a redemption that's unsought. Like Clint doesn't want to be redeemed. Neither did Scrooge in the first one. He was perfectly happy, or, thought he was, as he was. So that kind of unsolicited grace and redemption that's kind of coming in. But then they have to accept it. They have to want it in the end. That's quite Christmassy.
Yeah.
I feel like this film, it's almost like a camera that has to shift into focus every time a new thing enters the picture. So at some points, it feels like it's in focus, as in it's in alignment with, I guess, what we would call the beats of the Christmas story. But then it goes out of focus as well when it starts to do the whole try harder, pull your bootstraps up, like you can make it happen. But it was a really strange mix, and I quite liked it, actually, because my overall impression was that how can something be so weirdly, thoroughly Christian and yet not exactly know it? But then I think that this is what this film is, weirdly, even if it does have those parts where it wanders off the track.
Yeah, and I thought it was, in some ways, what the story that it presents is of redemption, of transformation, but there's no place for atonement, really. Like there's kind of talk about maybe they'll go and make amends, like they'll go and do good from here. But how do you pay for like all the bad stuff you've done? And Will Ferrell's character kind of raises that. Like he's like, what do I do about all these bridges I've burned and these wounds that I've caused? And I was thinking about it last week. I read an article about the British politician Matt Hancock, who went on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here reality TV show. And he said that he was looking for some kind of forgiveness because he was public health secretary during the pandemic and he broke the rules and he made these decisions that, a lot of people suffered because
it's not quite the confessional
Which, I mean,
booth.
going on a reality show, I know, to look for forgiveness and redemption. But the article was a bit like, well, maybe he kind of did, and they talked about him doing, like, they kept voting for him to do these terrible ordeal challenges, eat these awful things and stuff, and he did them and he did them well, and that kind of won people over. And I was a bit like, in what sense is that paying for anything that you did wrong?
But that's a very human thing, though, that we want to kind of punish ourselves in order to make up for things we've done. Whereas Christmas is all about, we've talked about grace and this sort of giftedness of that, so that not only you're not able to pay for those wrongs, but you don't have to either.
Yeah. Although it's not that they go away, it's that someone else has had to pay for them.
Yeah.
And that's what, well, we'll get to our Easter episode.
Yes, that's right. Stay tuned.
Easter's coming. We'll get on to Easter film soon. It sounds like we've got to the point where Spirited, perhaps like Violent Night, might not be immediate additions to the Christmas movie kind of classic list, but it does have some interesting and perhaps surprisingly theological things to say about Christmas and about humans. So that's Life and Faith for 2022 with me, Simon Smart, with Justine Toh and Natasha Moore. Thanks so much for joining us for this end-of-year chat about what makes a good Christmas movie, and we hope you find a good one to watch this year. Now, as we wrap it up, I just wanted to ask you guys, did you have a favourite episode this year as we end 2022?
Oh, good question. Obviously, so many. The one that comes to mind immediately, maybe just because it was a lot of fun for us as a team, was doing the episode on the Enneagram, because we got to do the Enneagram test, and our producer, Al, did it with us.
Still untangling
that
all
was
of
really
those
fun.
findings.
Yeah, that's right. The threads, the ripple effects.
I have to admit, I am biased, obviously, because I did this interview, but talking to Alex Gaffigan about Antarctica, and then it wasn't just about Antarctica, but it was almost like how to survive isolation and what did Antarctica teach her about surviving in isolation. I thought that was really interesting, and I loved what she had to say about seeing the night sky and almost feeling like you could fall out into space. Like, I thought that was really vivid and beautiful.
You had a bunch of wilderness ones this year. How about you, Simon?
It's hard for me to go past the first episode of the year, which was all about Danny and Layla Abdullah and their mighty act of forgiveness. I've been recovering ever since, but that was very affecting. So thanks so much for listening this year. We love doing Life and Faith. We hope you've enjoyed it too, and we hope you have a wonderful Christmas. We'll see you again next year.